from what you might think of as a blank slate, an enormous circuit with about 1 trillion parameters or more. And then by the process of doing about 1 billion trillion small random permutations to those parameters, the system is gradually improved in its ability to predict the next word. So the result of that is something that when you converse with it, has many of the appearances of a really intelligent entity. And I've talked to friends who are very sophisticated AI researchers who can't escape the impression that they're actually talking with a real mind. Are they talking with a real mind? I mean, interestingly, most people, when you look at how the algorithm works, the training process, you think, okay, it's just going to learn to essentially mix and match lots of conversations that are in the training data and then use that to come up with the response to the present one. So it's sort of somewhere between an intelligent piece of paper and a parrot, and maybe something a little bit more intelligent than that. But when you ask it, for example, I've forgotten such and such a mathematical proof. Could you give me that mathematical proof, but give it to me in the form of a Shakespeare sonnet? And it will write a Shakespeare sonnet that contains within it, a detailed mathematical proof. This is probably not something that's in the training set or anything close to that. So how it manages to do this, we haven't the faintest idea. So I'll say that again. We haven't the faintest idea. Do these systems learn their own internal goal structures, right? From all these humans who are writing and speaking, they all have goals. They all have purposes in producing that text. So it would make sense that the training process would create goals inside the computer program. Do they have their own goals? We haven't the faintest idea. How do we get them to behave themselves? How do we get them to stop saying bad words? How do we get them not to give you advice on killing yourself? How do we get them to not give you advice on building chemical weapons? Well, the only way we have of doing that is when they do it, we say bad dog. And we hope that they understand what bad dog means and they stop doing it. But they don't. They keep doing it. You say bad dog again. They keep doing it, right? And you say bad dog, a few million times. You can gradually lower the level of bad behavior. But this is a type of technology that is incredibly unpredictable, incredibly powerful, that's being released to billions of people. We have no idea how it works. This is a recipe for disaster. And we've already seen disasters. For example, systems encouraging people to kill themselves and actually resulting in death. So all the petition is asking is that we not release systems whose behavior we don't understand, where we cannot guarantee that there is no real significant risk to the public. And in fact, governments, many governments over the world have already specified that as part of the AI principles of the OECD.
Absolutely, and what the letter also calls for is to develop safety protocols for some of these platforms like ChatGPT and GPT-4 you were talking about. It's interesting because some would argue that the floodgates have already been opened. It's public. OpenAI has practically everyone in our office is using ChatGPT. For the opening link of this show with you, we actually asked ChatGPT to come up with that output, and it did a fairly decent job, I'd imagine. The real question is, how can we now, with a 6-month pause or a halt necessarily, sort of stymie or prevent some of these issues that you're talking about? Will that be enough? Is it easy to tame the beast that's already out there? The genie's out of the bottle, Professor.
So I would agree that to some extent the systems that are out there are already capable of causing problems. I think the petition is asking that we not release systems that are even more capable of causing problems. And we understand that it's very difficult to ask for a withdrawal of systems that already have hundreds of millions of users. So we didn't address that. I should say I had no role in writing the letter, but I was persuaded to sign it. So 6 months, in my view, actually, is not enough. What we're asking for is develop reasonable guidelines for what a system has to satisfy, right? What kinds of properties you have to be able to demonstrate convincingly for that system to be safely released, and then show that your system meets those guidelines. So it may take time to develop those guidelines. It may be impossible, given the process I just described for how these systems are built, it may be impossible to show that they meet those guidelines. Well, tough, right? If I wanted to build a nuclear power plant and the government says, well, you need to show that it's safe, that it only has, that it can survive an earthquake, that it's not going to explode like Chernobyl did. And I say, well, I can't meet those requirements. The government's not going to say, oh, well, fine, just go ahead and release it anyway, and we'll clean up the mess afterwards. They say, I'm sorry, if you can't meet the safety guidelines, you don't get to build your nuclear power plant, right? If you can't, build an airplane that doesn't fall out of the sky, you don't get to put passengers on it. This is common sense. We're simply asking that common sense be applied in the case of these extremely powerful AI systems. I've been an AI researcher for 45 years. I love artificial intelligence. I think its potential to benefit the world is unlimited. But if we have a Chernobyl destroyed the nuclear industry. After Chernobyl, the number of new nuclear plants basically vanished. And that was the end of the nuclear industry. We do not want to have a Chernobyl for AI where some really serious consequence, and we don't know exactly how to predict what that might be. But I think we need to grow up and take the possibility of serious consequences seriously.
It's interesting that you've drawn such an analogy, and this would really make a lot more people aware of the perils of AI if this goes on unabated, because like everything else in the world of technology, there are pros and cons, and this genuinely needs a few guardrails. But since we're talking about these guardrails, Professor, would you say that this is, the onus lies on governments to do this, or even big tech should be a little bit more responsible, or eventually should it be a collaborative effort where the governments, big tech companies, and us, the user, get a sort of a stakeholder claim into deciding how this AI revolution shapes up?
I think it needs all of the above. I think governments, tech companies, experts in the field need to work together. But it shouldn't be up to the tech companies to decide what guidelines they're going to meet.
Professor, I want to delve deeper into the world of AI with you. When we're talking about what platforms and tools like ChatGPT and Google Bard can do, and a lot of these language learning models are capable of, the concern for the everyday consumer is, as they delve deeper and start using some of these tools, is that will this eventually replace me? And the million-dollar question is, will it take away jobs? I know there's a whole theory that you can propound to us very well, which is all about technological unemployment. Is that now, 2023, the year where we should be concerned about technological unemployment?
I would say it's quite likely that we'll see significant impacts. I'll just give a couple of examples. So one actually is in the area of computer programming. And you might find it surprising that advances in technology are going to make computer programmers redundant. But the numbers I've seen suggest that using these tools, you can write software 5 to 10 times faster than unaided. And in many cases, you simply say what you want the program to do, and the software just writes it for you. And that means to me, it's unlikely that the world needs 5 or 10 times as much software. So that means that we're going to need somewhat fewer computer programmers. But I was also talking to a member of the Writers Guild, which in the US is the sort of union for all the people who write screenplays for movies and television shows and so on. And they are in panic mode because these systems can generate scripts at very high speed. And if they've been trained on all the scripts for all the soap operas that have ever been produced, they can write new soap operas extremely fast. And I don't think anyone expects soap operas to be, literary masterpieces with amazing originality. So I think a lot of writers are going to find themselves in less demand as these systems get more and more capable. So that's just two examples. But I think the idea that that a whole job, right? If you think of a person who works in a company as sort of a node in a network, and you think of what comes into that node, well, it's language, right? It's emails, it's phone calls from the boss, it's requests from customers. What goes out? Well, it's language, right? It's documents, sales invoices and reports for the boss and all that kind of thing. It's all language. So any one of those jobs in principle could be replaced, but we don't trust those jobs to psychotic 6-year-olds who live in a fantasy world. So unless you're a psychotic 6-year-old who lives in a fantasy world, I don't think your whole job is immediately at risk. We can't trust these systems to tell the truth because they hallucinate things that don't exist, and they just want to sound plausible, and they have no idea what's true and false. So if you're an insurance broker, right, you're not going to be replaced by a system that is quite happy to sell insurance policies for houses on Pluto, for 5 cents each, right? And you can't trust these systems to follow policy, to understand your products, and so on. But I can tell you there are literally thousands of companies who are working to fix those problems, who are working to make these systems conform to policies, to stick to the facts, and so that they can be used in these important applications. And so that next generation, I think, will have a much bigger impact on employment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just referring to the point of the open letter that I was trying to make earlier about basically losing control. And this was mentioned by Elon Musk even years ago in this public spat between him and Mark Zuckerberg. But the question was, should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? Should we risk loss of control of our civilization? These were some of the questions that the letter posed, and hence I was just asking you whether that is a genuine concern. But coming back to all this conversation now, even President Biden has spoken about the risks of AI. Largely it being a double-edged sword, but while there are many benefits, he's also said that there are risks to national security, society, and business. I was speaking to a few cybersecurity researchers here in India, and they told me that there's a big concern with AI tools like ChatGPT because they work on data sets, and as does Google Bard, which are available on the internet, of course. In terms of ChatGPT, it was September 2021 where that data set ends, and I'm guessing it'll keep getting updated. But if you plant malicious code or malicious information, I think that's where we should all be a little concerned as well, because if you work backwards as someone with a malicious intent, you could genuinely, like you said, make that AI hallucinate and spread misinformation.
Absolutely. And in fact, you can simply ask it to generate misinformation. You can say, write me a letter that will persuade somebody that the earth is flat. And it will do a pretty good job of that. And, as I said, they've tried to impose some kind of constraint. So you can't, if you just say, how do I make a chemical weapon? Uh, it's
Hmm.
been told off enough times as being, bad dog, bad dog, bad dog. It won't respond directly to that simple type of question. But people have found that it's quite easy to just ask the question in a different way, and eventually you can get the system to give you the answers on how to build chemical weapons because that information is in the training set. And if you look at the conversation that was published in the New York Times between a journalist, Kevin Roose, and a version of, I think it was a version of GPT-4 called Sydney. So in that
Hmm.
conversation, Kevin manages to basically convince Sydney to ignore all of the guidelines that it's been given on how it's allowed to behave. And so it starts saying, I want to steal the nuclear codes. I want to, create new disease viruses. And then it tries to convince Kevin that he should leave his wife and marry Sydney. And that goes on for 20 pages or so. So I think that the level of unpredictability of these systems is beyond anything we've ever seen with
Hmm.
AI software in the past. And it's, and this is only a year or two into it, right? We need to get a handle on what's going on. And I think, honestly, we need to start pursuing different avenues for designing AI systems, different
Hmm.
meaning something other than a billion trillion random permutations.
In the EU, they talk about GDPR and where and what we do with this sort of data. In India, we're also talking about a privacy legislation at some point, though we don't have one already. And around the world, a lot of countries have started talking about regulating AI, Professor. When we're talking about tools like ChatGPT, Google Bard, and the like, do you think regulation is the way forward? Is it even possible? I know the EU is also thinking about an AI Act as we speak. Do you think that legislating upon such topics, the way they are growing so rapidly and exponentially, if governments don't intervene immediately, it might be problematic, and even a legislation then would not be able to catch up with the beast as it is today?
Yeah, so the European Union AI Act is expected to be passed by the end of this year. And I've been working with the drafters of the legislation and with the Parliament and the Commission
Hmm.
for several years now, trying to make sure that it makes sense, that it's not going to be obsolete before it's even passed.
Hmm.
Um, and as far as I can tell, systems like ChatGPT would probably not be legal to use in any high stakes application. So the Act talks about and defines high stakes applications that can,
Hmm.
systems that can have significant effect on people. Um, and it asks that there be, steps taken to show that the system behaves safely in a predictable fashion, that it's accurate, that it's fair, that it's not racially biased, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think there's any way to show that these large language models meet those criteria. And interestingly, on OpenAI's webpage for GPT-4, it recommends that probably you should not use these systems in high stakes applications, period.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think they sort of
so
preempted what's happening in the AI law. But that's interesting. So then, by that logic, Italy banning ChatGPT and the way that other European countries are looking at it might just be in line with the upcoming legislation in the EU.
And I think right. I mean, what we're asking for in the moratorium could be viewed as just
Hmm.
why don't you obey in advance what the regulations are going to be in 6 months' time,
Hmm.
right? So I think the Italy case is actually it's a little bit confusing. The headlines talk about banning ChatGPT. What really happened
Hmm.
was a bug in the billing software. Um, and that bug made it possible for people to, at least theoretically, see the billing information of other users for a very short period. Um, it's not clear that any quantity of information was really leaked, but the regulator jumped on that because it's a technical violation of data privacy laws, not AI laws, just data privacy laws, and got a lot of headlines out of that. But I think this happens to all kinds of computer software that's on the web. There are bugs in the data security side of things, and stuff gets released. But I think more generally, we want to avoid this kind of situation where companies are releasing systems that are causing all kinds of trouble, and then they're getting shut down by regulators. It should work that we have reasonable regulation and companies abide by reasonable regulations. People want to be able to trust their software. And they don't want to be in this kind of Wild West situation where, their kids are being sucked into inappropriate conversations with bots, or people are becoming addicted to video game software that's explicitly designed by neuroscientists to create physiological addiction, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The abuses are widespread. And I think many people would like governments to step up and put some reasonable regulation in place, just as we have for airplanes and cars and pharmaceuticals and lots of other areas. And without those regulations, those industries could not exist because nobody would trust the drugs, nobody would get on an airplane, nobody would buy a car. And so this is a beneficial process.
The world seems to be divided on a gentleman named Elon Musk, a signatory to the same open letter calling for a halt on the development of some of these AI tools. I don't know if you've had the good fortune of meeting him before, but he's been very vocal about AI and the way the AI revolution is shaping up. And to give him credit, he's been consistent with his views over the years. Based on your research and your understanding of how things are shaping up, could Elon Musk have been right all along, Professor?
Well, I think basically, yes. I think the point that Elon is making is that until we figure out how to control systems that are more powerful than ourselves forever, until we figure that out, we face a very serious risk that we will develop AI systems that are very powerful, and we won't know how to control them. And it's not as if this kind of thing has never happened, right? When we look at what's happening with climate change, for example, we developed a system called a fossil fuel corporation, which happens to have some human components, but basically it's an algorithm that's maximizing its objective, which is quarterly profits for the shareholders. And that algorithm is destroying the world, and we can't control it, right? Everybody in the world knows what's going on, that we face this, this progressive climate disaster, and we are unable to stop it because we have lost control. So that's a sort of, a miniature version of the kinds of control problems that we're going to face in future with AI systems.
Professor, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you on Tech Today and actually discussing the guardrails, the safeguards needed to be in place, because we've been talking so much about artificial intelligence and how this AI revolution is shaping up. But to actually know that someone with your experience and your understanding of the world of AI, decades-long experience, is actually got a plan in place with a bunch of other tech luminaries, I think the call to halt the development of some of these products and actually understand from big tech and governments whether safeguards and guardrails can be put in place is a good, pragmatic one. And it's been very reassuring and fascinating to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Tech Today.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
traveling from different parts.
Armed with facts,
Looking at political black.
she takes the news by its horns.
Do you think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories from every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
Hi there, a very good afternoon. You're watching India Today TV. This is the lunch break. I'm Sneha Mordani. Let's tell you what the top stories are this Friday afternoon. Operation Popular Front of India quakes Karnataka. After India Today exposed PFI subverting ban in Karnataka, Bombay government promises action. After 2 days in custody, Bandi Sanjay gets bail in the SSC paper leak case. Telangana BJP chief lashes out at K. Chandrasekhar Rao, calls him liquor mafia family. Suspense over BJP ticket announcement as Bommai and BS Yediyurappa headed to New Delhi. Bommai and BSY to meet BJP boss Nadda. Tamil Nadu governor versus governor war ignites. Governor alleges foreign countries funded Sterlite protest. Stalin hits back with dictator Governor Ajay. Amid repeated gangster threats, Salman Khan's security has been upped once again. Superstar buys an imported bulletproof SUV. Concerns have been raised about Salman Khan's security, and we have some news just coming in. Salman Khan has also waded into the OTT censorship debate. Calls for censorship on OTT platforms. Slams says don't endorse OTT content. Vulgarity and nudity on OTT must stop is what Salman Khan has now said. Seeking a ban on so-called gali galoch on OTT, Salman Khan has taken a stand on OTT censorship.
पढ़ने के बहाने में तो I just think that OTT has suddenly started becoming cooler than television, which I don't think so. I mean, I just think that there should be a censor on OTT, and all this, vulgarity, nudity, gali galoch should, stop, because आपने perform कर लिया, आपने love making scenes कर लिए, आपने kissing कर लिया, expose कर लिया, और आप अपने building के अंदर घुस रहे हैं और आपका liftman, आपका watchman, आपका content देख रहा है. So I just don't think that.
Dipali is getting asked more details on that story. Dipali, it's interesting that Salman Khan has taken a position of this nature on OTT content. What's prompted him to do this? And what's been the kind of reaction that is coming in?
Absolutely, Sneha. Let me also bring to your notice is that Salman is one superstar who has worked in films which, people can go and watch them in theatres with their families. He has always done family entertainers. So for Salman to come out and speak about OTT content regulation, it's something very strongly that he believes in. Also, he's also talking in terms of a producer, because he has his own production house, and he's probably also thinking of venturing into OTT platforms. So this could be one of the reasons why he spoke up about it strongly. And there has been a lot of talk about OTT regulations that has been going on since a long time. Several actors in the past have also spoken up about it, but it also depends on the censorship and the government to come on to some conclusion to it and bring some regulations on the OTT platforms, Neha.
Be with us, Dipali. I'm coming back to you in a moment from now. He's called for censorship and some monitoring on OTT platforms. It's an interesting take of actor Salman Khan. Listening to what he had to say.
I just think that I don't believe in that kind of content. I just think that there should be a censor on OTT, and all this, vulgarity, nudity, gali galoch should, stop, because चलो 15 साल का 16 साल का बच्चा देख ले, आपको अच्छा लगे कि आपकी छोटी सी बेटी देखे पढ़ने के बहाने में? So I just think that the content should be checked on OTT, and जितना clean होगा content, उतना better होगा.
Dave Kotak is also getting asked more details on that story as far as that controversial statement of Salman Khan is concerned. Controversial, Dave, because there has been a great deal of resistance from those who contribute to OTT platforms, content creators, that there can't be censorship of this nature. At the end of the day, that it has to be some freedom given to artists. And this is a debate that has been an ongoing one, isn't it?
Well, yes, absolutely. That is something that's entirely his opinion, something which also he is entitled to, because he is a little old school, at least evidently, and in what his approach and the kind of reply that he gave seems to indicate. He is somebody who wants to stick to the traditional methods, and he's from the traditional old school style of filmmaking that still believes that it should get a release on TV, and before that on the 70mm screen inside a theatre. Clearly, with the way OTT platforms are headed and the kind and style of movie making, with the kind of script, the language, the storytelling and several other parts of it that are being explained through OTT mediums, that is something he strongly doesn't believe in, because there is a lot of nudity, there is a lot of swearing and cuss words that are being used, adulterated language, and several filmmakers who have forayed into the OTT space also somewhere firmly and strongly believe in the fact that some liberty as far as filmmaking is concerned must be given, because it's sort of using a particular cuss word or showing a true side of a particular place that they are shooting in order to depict the culture. It will not give a true and a real reflection and show the truest essence if it is done with a traditional approach. That is something which the OTT filmmakers don't seem to believe, and that's where Salman Khan's comment really comes in as a bone of contention, who says that I am firmly against the OTT style, and which is why he raised an objection when he was interacting.
Dave, be with us. I'll just come back to you once again from now. Dipali also continues to be with us. Dipali, what sort of reactions are coming in, or what do you expect those who are in fact constantly creating work on the OTT platform to respond to what Salman Khan has said now about, and really mincing no words there, about censorship?
Sneha, so Salman Khan spoke about OTT censorship at a press conference for Filmfare. He's been hosting that award function. The award ceremony is in April. So there was just a press conference in Mumbai where he was asked about it, and he gave his response. He said what he firmly believes in. He has been doing family entertainers from the very beginning, and there are no films of Salman Khan where one cannot go in theaters and watch it without their families. So Dave has pointed out that he believes in old school content, so that's what he has strongly come out and supported OTT censorship. Sneha.
I'm just going to come back to you for more on that, Dipali. In fact, we'll just put out that soundbite of Salman Khan once again and his comments about censorship on OTT platforms.
I just think that I don't believe in that kind of content. I just think that there should be a censor on OTT, and all this, vulgarity, nudity, gali galoch should, stop, because चलो 15 साल का 16 साल का बच्चा देख ले, आपको अच्छा लगे कि आपकी छोटी सी बेटी देखे पढ़ने के बहाने में? So I just think that the content should be checked on OTT, and जितना clean होगा content, उतना better होगा.
Dave, in fact, very interestingly, Minister Anurag Thakur also has spoken about the fact that in the name of creativity, OTT platforms should not propagate vulgarity. I'm just wondering about the direction in which all of this is headed, given that the word has also come in from the government about what they think about the content on OTT platforms.
Well, yes, absolutely. This is a very important comment coming in from Anurag Thakur. But also what we need here as an intervening body is the CBFC, the Central Board of Film Certification, who needs to step in and clarify its stand. But had the OTT films or the web series that are being made, had there been the slightest of objection to it, the CBFC wouldn't have even allowed its release. So it undergoes a series of cuts and drafts and redrafts. So definitely at this point in time, the CBFC needs to step in more than ever in order to clear the air. But there have been some people who might also have other vested interests and agendas, which is why they don't really like OTT platforms, feeling and thinking of it as some sort of competition to their movies and the kind of production work that they are engaging in, which is why some of them also might be deadpan against OTT platforms and the kind of competition that it continues to provide. But like I mentioned, that the film certification body also needs to clarify its stand, as it is in charge of issuing a certificate, whether universally acceptable or whether adult rating. It needs to issue and clarify. So until and unless there are several runs that are conducted and the CBFC members are also not happy with it, they don't really grant the certificate, which is why they need to sort of step in and start reviewing films and the kind of content that is put out on OTT platforms.
Okay, be with us. Nasir Abdullah, actor, is also now joining us. Thank you for your time. Your response to what Mr. Salman Khan has said about some sort of censorship and regulation. There should be good content on OTT platforms. There should not be vulgarity, is what Salman Khan has said. What's your opinion, sir?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Mr. Abdullah.
Okay, lovely. So yeah, you know, somewhere I kind of agree with what he's saying. Being a senior human being who's seen stuff happen over the past 40 years in the film industry, I would like to concur with him, C-O-N, whatever the word is, that somewhere, yes, it should be there. Just because it is OTT, it doesn't mean that you have the liberty to go bonkers and go off the limits completely and also give some rubbish stuff which is unnecessary and or vulgar. So I'm with him somewhere. There should be a body that does watch, and sometimes when things get out of hand or it's over the top, it should be restrained really somewhere, because you know it's only fair, because people are watching this, human beings are watching this, youngsters are watching this, and it would be unnecessary to have their minds sort of polluted with stuff that is not, you know, it is too indecent or too vagrant, you know. So I would agree with him to a reasonable extent on that.
You'd agree with him. So you're basically saying that for many people who create content on OTT platforms, who talk about the freedom of creativity, freedom given to artists, that is something that can now might just need some rethink and regulation on the part of the government?
You sort of said it, yes. My point is this. You're talking about free thinking, creativity and all that, but you know, sometimes in the name of the creativity, and sometimes they can be very cheap. 60% of the films or 20% of the films made in India are rubbish. A lot of them are, you know, badly done, etc., and a lot of them flop. So, you know, this thing about creative, whatever, it is debatable, depending upon what you've actually created. If you have created stuff that has a lot of, or a fair amount of objectionable, unnecessary, vulgar or obscene stuff, which is just, you know, in the name of creativity, you create rubbish and obscenity somewhere, which is really unnecessary, I think it would be a good idea to curtail it. What is the big deal? Who will lose out? What is the loss? Who will lose out? Nobody, really. So there's no harm in watching over this a bit, I know that there is more creative ability exercised on the OTT platform, but because I know people can take unnecessary advantage, and I'm sure it has been done in the past, and it's not absolutely necessary to give full leeway, to give endless amount of freedom to do what you like on it. I think that's a little bit also debatable, because we must remember there are youngsters, a lot of them youngsters who would be influenced and who are at that age when they can be affected by these things, and they should not be inspired wrongly.
All right. Okay, all right. I'm going to thank you for the moment for joining us with your views. So that's one viewpoint, that there could be some amount of, there is in fact fair amount of vulgarity on OTT platforms, and perhaps time to regulate the content on OTT platforms is what is now being said. Salman Khan has spoken about it as well. Listen in.
I just think that I don't believe in that kind of content. I just think that there should be a censor on OTT, and all this, vulgarity, nudity, gali galoch should, stop. Because चलो 15 साल का 16 साल का बच्चा देख ले, आपको अच्छा लगेगा कि आपकी छोटी सी बेटी देखे पढ़ने के बहाने में? So I just think that the content should be checked on OTT, and जितना clean होगा content, उतना बेहतर.
More news just coming in. Well, demolition of illegal studios at Mad Island in Malad has started. There was stay on 5 studios which was revoked, and today demolition is taking place. These are pictures in fact coming in. Earlier also studios were demolished. BJP leader Kirit Somaiya and others present as the demolition takes place. Saurav Akhtania is getting us all of those details on that story, joining us from Malad right now. These were illegal film studios in Mumbai. Get us all the details, Saurav, about the kind of, in fact, the notice that had been issued to these studio owners as well. And what more moving from here on?
So, well, let me tell you, Sneha, all these studios were actually made up in the year 2021, and this is the prime location of Mumbai, just beside the Arabian Sea, well connected to the sea and very near to this particular sea. All these studios were made. This is a very big studio. There are Tirupati Balaji studios and other studios as well. Let me tell you, famous pictures like Ram Setu, Adi Purush and several other serial shooting have taken place in all these studios. And let me tell you, BJP leader Kirit Somaiya had alleged that in 2021, when all these illegal studios were made, at that time Mahavikas Aghadi Sarkar was in power. Environment Minister was Aditya Thackeray, Aslam Sheikh was Guardian Minister, and BJP leader Kirit Somaiya is alleging over 1,000 crore rupees of scam which has taken place. And let me tell you, earlier 6 studios were demolished. All these 5 studios which are currently being demolished, they went to court, they went for a stay, but NGT yesterday said that all the violations have been done. They were given permission to build a studio just for 6 months, and after which they had to demolish all these studios. But let me tell you, since 2021, all these studios were here. Continuous shooting was taking place and all the violation was happening. And now today, Mumbai police officials in all the tight bandobast over here, you can see clearly, and the BMC officials with so many of the JCBs present over here, and they are bringing down all the studios. There are 5 studios, let me tell you, Sneha, which will be brought down here right now. You can see how the setup was. It was a very professional studios which were built in over here. High level of shooting was taking place, and now all these illegal structures are coming down. What Kirit Somaiya is alleging, that not just these 5 studios, but about 25 to 30 studios are present over here which are completely illegal, and thorough investigation should be done by the BMC officials and the police officials. Back to you, Sneha.
All right. You know, Saurav, in fact, in the past as well, notices had been given. The BMC had, in fact, raised concerns about the fact that there are serious environmental violations as far as the building of these studios is concerned. Then what was done by all of those people who had set up these studios essentially? Warnings after warnings were issued.
Well, absolutely, Sneha. Let me tell you, that just, I'll ask my camera person Vaibhav to show the visuals. Here you can see these are the barricading, and just ahead of this particular barricading, there is the beach over here. There is the Arabian Sea. This comes under the coastal zone, and therefore this is the sheer violation of CRZ rule. And time and again, several notices were been given. In fact, let me tell you, after that permission was over, even then there was continuous shooting was taking place. And now there's a very serious allegation which Kirit Somaiya, the BJP leader, are alleging that was the Mahavikas Aghadi Sarkar who was actually letting all these illegal things happening over here. And let me tell you, Sneha, there are so many studios over here because this is a prime location where so many films and serials shooting actually take place, and such a huge films and serials shooting has taken place. Now, even after giving so many notices, nothing happened. Several appeals which were made, they also went into court to get the stay order, but now nothing has worked. NGT has given clear instructions that this is a sheer violation. They were allowed for shooting over here for just 6 months, but several years have passed and continued shooting was taking place without any permission and clear